My name is Julie Gatt. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. A few housekeeping reminders. Everyone will be muted during the webinar, and we will be saving all questions for the end. And you can enter those questions at the bottom where it says Q&A. If you type those questions in, we'll make sure we get to those. And a recording of this webinar will be sent out at the conclusion of today's webinar. So with that, I would like to introduce our sales engineer for today's demo, Ali.
So hey everyone, let me start by sharing my screen. Yep. My name is Ali Shower. I've been with Instabug for 5 months now. And today we're going to go through talk a little bit about Instabug, specifically our crash reporting and APM modules. And we'll go through Instabug quickly in a few slides. Talk a bit about the voice of our customers, and then we'll show you how you can integrate and start using Instabug directly. Then we'll take you through the dashboards and talk a bit about our solutions. And then we can have, of course, at the end, any questions you may have, we'll make sure to have them answered. So your entire life cycle. So basically, Instabug makes sure that you can release with confidence. And we have, through our application performance monitoring, bug reporting, and crash reporting, and we have this thorough data to actually support this. So we give you the ability to detect those issues, debug them, and reproduce them, so we can save you a lot of time and money. Monitor and make sure that you don't get any regressions and you don't see those issues again. Collect valuable feedback and try to drive that positive app reviews. So you just win over your customers and make sure that your users don't churn. How do we do that? We have 3 main products: bug reporting, crash reporting, and APM. So bug reporting, basically, it's the longest product we've had. We've had it for the longest time, and it really reduces the time and cost by getting very thorough bug reports with all the metadata that you may need to actually reproduce and know exactly what happened to the user and fix that issue and release with confidence. Crash reporting, we collect all kinds of, Instabug is known for collecting all kinds of crashes. So anything that has to do with fatal crashes, non-fatal crashes, handle exceptions, out-of-memory crashes, application not responding crashes, all those kinds of crashes are collected automatically, and you get very thorough reports, just as I will show you in the demo as well. Since crashes don't tell you exactly everything, you can even improve that user's experience and quality by getting extra metrics, like since crash is the worst case scenario, there are other unpleasant experiences that the users may go through while using the app. Long waiting times, slow network calls, the app launching in too much time, and so on. So this is a sample of the kinds of users that are our customers, and all kinds of industries, all kinds of verticals, different user bases, different use cases for each one of them, and we'll make sure that the solution actually fits for pretty much everyone. So Instabug today is on 2 billion devices, 400 million plus issues managed and resolved, sent to the dashboard for more than 25,000 companies. So these are some testimonials with different use cases from different customers. So one of them was, they had a way to communicate with the users already, but they had data in such a way that was unorganized, and Instabug actually had them know how to prioritize their data and exactly where to look and how to debug those issues. And for other companies, it was more of trying to drive down that or drive up that crash-free session rate, and it worked successfully. They've been using us for over 2 years. And for VP, for example, it was the quality of the SDK and how our support teams were actually there to help out, from the integration, from the beginning of the integration up until it was up and running, and they're all success stories. So how it works, how you can integrate Instabug into your applications. So these are the platforms that we currently support. iOS, Android, React Native, Flutter, Cordova, Xamarin, and Unity. And it's as easy as a single line of code. You can have that. It's there in our documentation as well. This is an iOS example. You can go through our documentation. You can have an exact snippet of code for each one of the platforms to know exactly how to integrate Instabug. It's very easy, and you have our support there 24/7 to help you out if you need any further help. We also seamlessly integrate with your favorite tools. So you're using Jira, you're using Slack daily, and we understand that they may be the central platforms for your communication with the team or your ticketing system, and we have native integrations with those. So we have over 30 plus native integrations for you to be alerting for specific scenarios, and I'll show you how to do that on the dashboard itself. The security of your data. So, I mean, we don't process your data. We don't use it for tracking purposes or anything. It's encrypted at rest, in transit and at rest. We have a dedicated security team that takes care of this, and they answer a lot of questions for a lot of our customers, and we are GDPR compliant and SOC 2 version 2 compliant. We have internal audits and compliance reviews frequently. So your data is pretty much safe with Instabug. You don't need to worry about that. One more thing is that it's Instabug is very stable, and it's 99.99. It has 99.99% uptime. So that would conclude the slides part of our presentation. Now I'm going to take you through the dashboard itself. So we're going to be talking mainly about our crash reporting and APM. And the first thing I'd like to point out is that Instabug, you know, it's a one-stop shop for all the products we just talked about. So bug reporting, crash reporting, and APM, they're all there in the same dashboard. It's a one-time integration thing, so we don't need to integrate the SDK for each one of those. So it's a one-time integration thing. So we're going to be talking about crash reporting, and we're going to emphasize a little bit about a specific use case, which is prioritization, but we're going to go through the entire product anyhow. So the first thing that would catch your attention is the banner that you would have up here, which shows the crash-free sessions and the amount of crashes you actually received over the last 7 days. It's a way for you to monitor the stability of your application over the last 7 days. And how you can, and then you have the crash list all in front of you. So these are all the crashes that happened in the last 7 days. And you can actually move that filter to see crashes even before that. And we were just having this conversation with a customer last week. It was a huge customer, tens of millions of users, big enterprise, and we went through how they actually use crash reporting to actually, you know, they get thousands and thousands and thousands of crashes, and it's kind of tough to go just through the crashes and try to find which ones they want to look at first. So the way the team is set up is that they have like small sub teams that each one of these sub teams are actually handling one screen of the application. So we're talking to the one who's actually handling the landing screen of the application. And one of the things that you can actually do here is that you can filter by the screen that you want to take at. So this is the part you want to prioritize, the part that is relevant to your team. And this is what they do. So they choose, for example, this screen right here, and then it would show the crashes that only happen on that screen right here, right? And then they would even prioritize more because, you know, as you can see here, you have some information like the number of occurrences of each crash and the number of users affected by that crash. So of course you can sort by each one of those. So depending on your use case and depending on exactly how you want to see priority, you can actually do that. One more thing they do is that since we talked about collecting different types of crashes like fatal crashes, non-fatal crashes, ANRs. So this is an Android application, for example. And, you know, the first thing they want to look at is if a crash happens, if a fatal crash happens. So for them means, you know, just filtering using that. So now you're kind of narrowing down and you're kind of zooming in on exactly what you want to look at. You're prioritizing exactly the types of crashes that you want to start fixing and debugging, right? One more thing is another scenario is that you have different companies have a way to segment the user base. So some companies have, for example, paying customers and non-paying customers. Some applications have VIP users and non-VIP users, and they usually want to attend to the more important customers or the paying customers. So you have a way to actually do that by selecting user attribute. It's an API we give you, and then you can have that attached to every crash report. So we'll have an identifier whether this crash happened to the paying user and non-paying user, right? And then at the end, you would get exactly the 2-3 crashes that you can actually start looking at prioritizing, because not every crash needs fixing right away. So, so now that you have that list, you can go in and start looking at more data from that crash and debugging. One last use case, actually, we were just talking about it today, is that you may have a release that happened just, let's say, this morning, and you want to see any crashes that start developing or start appearing on that specific release. So what you kind of do here is you can filter by the app version. So let's say this is the last one, and then you can look at everything that happens within the last 6 hours. So ever since you actually released that. And this is in real time, so you can actually see the crashes as they come in. So it's kind of a way of monitoring the stability of your application right after you release, right? So now let's go in and see what a crash would look like on the inside. So I have a crash already open. So as soon as you open the crash, sorry about that. This is the kind of information that you would get. You'd still get a way to, this crash right here happened 24 times to 24 users. And you can actually filter those occurrences as well by your priority. So if you want to look at a specific user base, and if you have that segmentation of users within your app, you can actually start looking at the more important ones for now, and then start looking at the other ones for later. And then you would get a real breakdown, so you can restart debugging. So you would get a real breakdown by aggregation. So you get how many occurrences happened per app version, how many occurrences happened per device, and this kind of information is collected automatically. So no extra instrumentation is needed from your side. You can have that broken down by operating system version or by the current view even, and then pointing towards exactly where that problem happens is the way for you to start knowing the source of the problem, which is the stack trace, and you would have exactly pointing towards which stack, which frame where the crash happened, and then you get even more debugging capability by actually you can go. So these happen 24 times, so you can go through each one of the 24 occurrences and knowing each occurrence metadata, and I'll show you exactly what kind of data you have. So you have, for each occurrence, you can just go through them. You have the app version, the device, the OS, the memory, and so much more metadata. And we talked in the beginning, as I was introducing Instabug, that you have a way to reproduce the crash that happened. And this is what we kind of give you. So we have repro steps, which is a screen by screen flow of what the user went through up until the crash happened. And of course, that is dimmed because the crash happens without any consent from the crash is sent. The crash report is sent without any consent from the user. So you kind of get the name of the fragment or the name of the screen along all of the activity that happened on that specific screen up until the crash happened, right? So it's a kind of way for you to just take out your phone and reproduce exactly what happened and see if you get that exact same crash. Along with the repro steps, you also get a session profiler, which is the state of the device leading up to that crash for the last 60 seconds. So memory usage, storage, connectivity, whether it was cellular Wi-Fi, for example, or a switch between those may have caused the crash. So you would kind of see what happened in the last 60 seconds before that crash happened, as well as the level of the battery and whether it was plugged in or not, and the orientation of the device. That, of course, and all kinds of logs that you would have. So we have different kind of logs. We have all the console logs from your code. We have Instabug logs, which we give you the APIs for to flag your logs and kind of get that verbosity level in there. So you can filter by those, so you don't have to go through all of the logs. Any network logs, so any network calls that happen within that session, like this one, and you get kind of the request header and body and the response header and body. And for security purpose and for privacy purposes, you have all the APIs to hide out certain information that you don't want to be visible on the dashboard, like if you have any authentication tokens and so on. Also, a way to actually, you get a way to actually talk to your users and have that communication back and forth. Say maybe we understand the crash happened, sorry about that, we're looking into it and we'll get back to you. So you can actually talk to all of the users that experienced that crash, or a specific user even. So now that you found out exactly what happened and you fixed that crash, you may want to look, or maybe you'd like to get notified if that crash happens again. So any regression of any kind for that crash, you'd like to be notified. And we kind of have a way, as I said, we have integration, so you can integrate with your favorite tools like Jira or Slack, and you can get notified, or you can get alerted if something in specific happens. So from the rules here, you can actually choose that if after you close that crash, so that you fix that crash and it closed, and then you can add specific conditions. So on that new app version, for example, and then you can have that forwarded to your favorite tool. A Jira integration, for example, so a Jira ticket would open, and then when you save that, if any occurrences of that crash happen again, you would kind of get notified on Jira that, okay, that crash reappeared, so you need to go and have a look. And this is not the only use case or scenario that you can actually use alerts for, but you can actually use it for specifically when you're talking about crashes to see any spikes, or maybe any future, let's say, major issues that may happen. So you can put thresholds in there and have the dashboard notify you if something is if the number of occurrences surpass a specific threshold, or the number of crashes or the number of affected users within a specific time surpass a specific threshold, you can get notified on your favorite tools. And then you have all sorts of conditions as well. So you can choose that by crash type, by exception message. If you have specific app version, as I said before, affecting a specific user segment as well, and then you can get notified about those. So that would kind of give you as well a way to have that code ownership. If you have sub teams, you want them to be alerted, and you want them to take note of crashes that happen in the part that is actually relevant to their team only, right? So that will kind of be a quick tour of our crash reporting module. We talked about crash reporting. We talked about the crash reporting. We talked about that this is the worst case that the user can run through. But there are so many other unpleasant or bad experiences that the user can go through while using the app, like if he's experiencing slow loading times or slow network requests and so on. And this is where APM actually comes in. So you have crash-free sessions, which is basically the metric that everyone looks at when they're resolving crashes. But APM has a new North Star metric that you can use, which incorporates the crashes as well, which is called the Apdex Score. It's a measure from 0 to 1. The higher you go, the better you are. And how this is actually divided, it's divided into like smaller metrics, like the metrics we have are app launches, execution traces, network calls, screen loading, and UI hangs. And I'll go through each one of those in a while. And depending on how these are performing in the application, it will give you a score. here. So you kind of know how the app is performing the performance from a user perspective. And you kind of get that as well with a pattern, so you can see how it's performing over time. So off the top of my mind, if you're trying to look for a specific app version that has just been released and has just been pushed into production, you want to see what that is actually like, you can actually choose a specific app version, and that would actually show you, sorry about that. That would kind of show you exactly what it would look like. So going into those metrics. So as I said, crash reporting is part of that North Star metric. So if you click here, you kind of go back to the crash reporting module. So it's kind of incorporated within APM, as it's very important when it comes to measuring app performance. And then you have a metric like app launch. So from the dashboard here, you can see the mini Apdex Score for that app launch. So how well that hot app launch is performing. And that P50, so the average where 50% of your users are experiencing for that latency, and the P95, and how many people are actually dissatisfied from that app launch. And then the way you can customize this dashboard is by you can set that latency yourself. So if you see that the cold app launch, for example, should happen in 2 seconds, you should have that as 2 seconds, or you can customize that so you can change that. And then that Apdex Score would actually be measured against that threshold that you have out there. So how can you go about going through the APM dashboard and looking at different metrics? Is that you can actually start looking at anything that doesn't look right. So for example, here, screen loading, you see a number that is below fair or poor performance. So this is one thing that should grab your attention. You should look at. Same thing with, for example, here in UI hang. So it looks like a lot of your screen are actually experiencing a lot of UI hangs, and you should take a look at that. So for example, here the main activity, which is probably the main screen of the app, has half of the user base is actually dissatisfied, or half of the sessions that went through that came through that screen is dissatisfied. So you should have a look at that, right? So talking about each one of the metrics a little bit. App launch, how long it takes for the app to launch from scratch is the cold app launch, and then you get how it's performing over time, throughput. So how many app launches you've had over time, and you get that pattern of the P50 and the distribution. So you kind of get an idea of what most of your users are experiencing from cold app launch perspective, and you can kind of see the outliers out here. So this is something that maybe you should take a look at. And then you can get a breakdown of the problem as well. So in this specific example, you can get all the methods that have been called for that application to launch, and you get the latency for each one of the methods basically. And what you would do is, if you see a higher number for example, the UI kit and app in it, then this is something that you should look at. This is causing the application to launch in a longer time than it should. So you can go and take a look at that. And this is where you start your debugging process. And then again, you get some patterns below. So you get a breakdown of each app version, how each app version is performing, how each device is performing. So in this is an iOS application. So you can see that each one has its own Apdex Score, the P50, how many will be dissatisfied over the total count of occurrences. You can by OS version or by first screen, since you can land in the application on any one of the screens, basically. So that was for the cold app launch, and then you can have, it breaks it down by cold app launch or hot app launch, which is the same thing, but hot app launch, you bring the application from the background to the foreground, basically. And you get the same kind of granularity of information in there, right? Next would be our execution traces, which is ways for you to prioritize if you want to look at specific parts of the code. So you want to see how long it takes for a specific part of the logic to run in the code. You have a start and end API that we give you, and then you put those in the code, and then these are broken down. Each one of them has its separate Apdex. You can put a threshold for each one of these. The P50, so where half of your users are, what half of users are experiencing from a latency perspective, and then you can go into each one of those and see that thorough data again broken down, like how it's performing over time, the throughput over time as well, the P50 and the distribution. So most of the users as well are experiencing below 1.5 seconds, and then you have your dimensions here, which kind of breaks down each app version, each device, and how each one of these are performing as well. So one question I would get is, what should I look at first? And this really depends on what you see as a severe metric. So if you have a high dissatisfied count on one of those, you maybe want to prioritize those and look into those first. So this one looks like it has a lower Apdex score than the rest, and you would see that again in the outlier settings, and it basically points out the dimensions that are performing the worst. So you don't have to go through it yourself, right? And then execution trace by design is made to actually customize what you want to look at. So if you don't want to look at a specific screen or a specific app launch or network call, you can actually customize what you want to look at. So you get the start and end API, and you get to play around with them and have them in your code. Network calls, and this has a lot of thorough data because it's kind of different from the rest of the metrics. So each API in your code is collected automatically and is grouped together, and then you get all this kind of thorough data about each one of these APIs. So you can see how it's performing over time again. You can customize the threshold again. Same distribution, P50. And then what's different here is that you'll actually see the failure rate over that API. So any 400 errors, 500 errors, whether it's client-side or server-side errors, and the percentage of that. And that is actually a way for you to prioritize whether this is relevant for your team or not. So if you see most of the errors coming from the server side, you may want to talk to the back-end team because this would concern them more than it would concern the mobile team, right? And then again, with the dimensions, but here you get very thorough data because the network can actually perform differently if it's in by country or by radio. And this is why you get all this sort of granular data in the network, and even by carrier or by payload size. And please feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A part, and I'll make sure to go through those at the end of the demo. Next would be the screen loading time. So kind of gives you an idea of how every screen is performing. So if you have any transitions from one screen to another, you can kind of automatically get every screen in there and see how it's performing and how long it takes to actually load. And then you have that breakdown again of every single method that was called for that screen to load, and the breakdown of how long each part of that application took. One last thing, again, the dimensions. So you get the app version, device, and OS version. So you get a mini breakdown of how this suite loading is doing over different dimensions. Okay. Last but not least, it would be the UI hangs, and the UI hangs. Every screen is collected automatically and grouped together, and then you get aggregate data over how many hangs or how well it's performing from a hang perspective. And here it's different, so you can kind of get an idea how the percentage of the time that the user actually takes in a hang within that specific screen, right? So if it's more than 10%, you kind of want to take a look at that screen and see exactly what's taking what's the hang, why so many hangs. And the thing is, here you can't put a threshold because by definition a hang is defined as a frame drop more than 250 millisecond, right? So it's already defined, so you don't have that sort of threshold. You can't put that threshold in there. And then within the dimensions, again, you can kind of really have that debugging capability of knowing exactly why it happened, and then you get power saving mode and battery level mode, because these actually affect the hang percentage more in your app. So now I've gone through the metrics, and this is what makes up all of these metrics together, and how they're performing is what makes up the Apdex score. And again, you can have within your rules, you can have for each one of these matrices a way to actually get alerted on your tools, on your day-to-day tools, to actually go take a look at the dashboard and see exactly what happened. So if a network, if you choose a specific, if a failure rate exceeds a specific threshold, for example, within a time range, then you can get notified on Slack or on your favorite Jira channel, on your favorite Slack channel, or have a ticket open on Jira. Same thing with app launches, same thing with execution traces. So you kind of get that automation that you would have, that you wouldn't have to stay on the dashboard the entire day. So yeah, that would kind of be it. So I'll take it back to Julie.
Awesome. Thank you, Ali. I really appreciate that. We did have some questions come in. Let me go ahead and pull them up real quick. Okay, first, how is the severity assigned to a particular crash?
Yeah, so the severity metric in the crash page is actually calculated by it factors in the number of users affected and the number of occurrences that happened of that specific crash, and the total number of versions that were affected. So it factors in all three measures together to get that severity metric, and then you can sort by that. So this is one of the things that you like to prioritize your crash list by. It's one of the things that you can have.
Awesome. So this is a lengthy question, so bear with me. Do you support crashes coming from a React Native app? The JS part of the crash is what's important on those crashes and not the native stack trace. If yes, do you combine the JS and the native stack traces in one crash ticket?
Yes, we actually, I mean, if you get from the same app, if you get a crash on the React Native part, you actually see the JavaScript stack trace in there. It will kind of point you towards where that happened. If it happened on the native part, yeah, you will be pointing to that stack trace as well. So it's a yes.
Awesome. Next question is, does Instabug only need to be implemented one time, or must it be implemented at every point we want information?
It's a one-time integration, as I said, as I mentioned, as I showed in the beginning, and you can actually see that in our documentation as well. It's a one-time integration, and then what features you want, it's a flip of a switch from our side. So bug reporting, crash reporting, and EPM, or a mix of those.
Next question that came in says, what types of crashes do Instabug capture? Does Instabug capture?
So somebody says he loved the Einstein mural. What kinds of Instabug? So all kinds of crashes. We're talking failed crashes, non-fatal crashes. So when I say non-fatal crashes, what I mean is that even if you have handled exceptions within your code, you actually report those back to the dashboard, so you can get a look of what exactly happened. For Android, application not responding crashes. For iOS, out of memory crashes. Network failure crashes. We're about to release fatal UI hang, so basically application not responding for iOS as well. So all kinds of crashes are actually supported within for Instabug.
Awesome. Another question came in: is there a way to create a customized page for reporting Instabug using a Flutter plugin?
That is not supported at the time, but I'd love to know more about this. So maybe you can contact us for a demo at some point and talk about this, because this would actually benefit us. I mean, if it's something that we find that will be of benefit to most of our customers, we can actually think about implementing it.
Awesome. So for a startup with limited resources to start with, which of your products would you prioritize first, second, and third?
Where's that question again?
So for a startup with limited resources to start with, which of your products would you prioritize first, second, and third?
It really depends on what you have already and what you want to achieve. So really depending on the use case. If what you're looking for now is to really reduce that time on testing, on that testing phase, or that pre-release phase, I think that would be the bug reporting part. But what would you do in production? So I think all three of them go very well together. But it really depends on what you want to look at. Is it production have you already released and have already something in production? Or are you still testing that app and still haven't got into production? So it really kind of depends on the use case. And again, you can contact us anytime. We can talk further about the use case and give you more advice.
Great. Next question is, does the integration affects app performance?
Not much, no. I mean, from a performance perspective, pretty much from latency perspective, just a few milliseconds, and from a size perspective, the SDK size is very small. So it's really been designed to be very lightweight on the apps. So we don't really have any problems or any complaints from our customers regarding size or overhead.
Next question is, are there any possible customizations that a developer can do related to bug reporting?
Yeah, really depends on what you mean by customizations. But I mean, if you want something in specific, you can definitely talk to our engineering team to get that done. What you want to attach, if you want to attach specific metrics or specific attributes to the bug report, yes, you can do that, definitely. If you're talking about the prompt that the user gets on the screen, and you want to change its UI, so the main look and feel, yes, definitely you can have that. So it really kind of depends on what you mean by customization. But yeah, we are pretty customizable in pretty much all aspects.
Would it be possible to highlight some of the features Instabug has that something like Firebase does not have?
Yeah, so if you're talking about crash reporting, for instance, you don't have out-of-memory crashes in Crashlytics, Firebase Crashlytics. So we kind of collect all kinds of crashes. They don't, so that's one thing. Also, the kind of customization you get in the alerting part. So, you know, if you have spikes in your crashes and you want to be alerted by that, you don't have that sort of customization for the alerting part. Also, you don't have the same support that Instabug gives. So Instabug is there for you 24/7. If we're talking about APM versus Firebase, you know, it's that Apdex Score, that North Star metric that we have, which is kind of a way for you to monitor the performance without having to go deep into each one of the different metrics. They don't have that. They don't have that. And again, we have all the aggregate data to make up those statistics and those insights. So we don't really do any sampling. So we take every single session into consideration. So this is one of the things that that we do better than Firebase.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions that came in today. If there's anything else, oh, actually, sorry. One more just came in. Specific to Flutter, what's the way to report and manage bugs?
I mean, it would be the same as the rest of the platforms. So you get basically pretty much all the capabilities that you would have with iOS and Android. So if you could elaborate a little bit more on what exactly you're looking at bug reporting that you think may not be present for Flutter, I'd love to answer that.
Does your product work equally between iOS and Android?
Yes, 100%, definitely.
And what are your plans on improving stability?
There were countless cases of our app crashing because of Instabug crashes. So, I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it's our uptime is 99.99% of the time. If there are unfortunate events where that happened, I'm sure our engineering team will be there like momentarily to fix that and push out a new release for you. But very, very sorry. I apologize about that experience, but this is not the usual.
Awesome. Well, I think we answered all the questions that came in today. Thank you everyone for answering or for asking your questions. I do encourage you, if there are more specific things that you guys want to get into, to set up a demo, a one-on-one demo with us. We're more than happy to get that going and set that up. And I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, a recording of this will be sent out to all attendees. So look out for that and appreciate your time this morning. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you, Adam.